The invitation never came. For 43 years, Thanksgiving at Victoria Morrison's Napa Valley estate had been as certain as the sunrise. The sprawling vineyard property would transform into a family haven, her 4 children flying in from across the country, their spouses, her 12 grandchildren, even distant relatives who suddenly remembered they were family when November rolled around. But this year, October passed without the elegant cream invitations that usually arrived the first week of the month. Then November began. Then the second week came and went. Nothing. Maybe Mom's just running behind. Marcus, the eldest at 46, texted the family group chat. But even as he sent it from his Manhattan office, he didn't believe it. Victoria Morrison had built a billion-dollar tech empire on precision timing. She didn't run behind. Ever. Or maybe she's finally done with us, his sister Diana replied, adding a laughing emoji that couldn't quite hide the sharp edge underneath. The message sat there, unacknowledged, because none of them wanted to admit Diana might be right. Hey, before we get into today's story, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing where everyone's tuning in. And honestly, this story, it could happen to anyone. Maybe even someone you know. It was Marcus's husband, David, who finally called the estate on the Monday before Thanksgiving. He got through to Grace Chen, Victoria's estate manager and assistant of 25 years, whose usually warm voice carried an unfamiliar tension. Mrs. Morrison isn't hosting this year. She's made other arrangements. Other arrangements? David's stomach dropped. What does that mean, Grace? I really can't say more. You'll need to speak with her directly. But Victoria wasn't answering. Not Marcus's calls. Not Diana's. Not their younger siblings, Jordan and Nicole. The woman who'd negotiated billion-dollar acquisitions before breakfast, who never missed a call from family, had gone completely silent. She's 71, Marcus said that evening, pacing their Tribeca loft while David watched with growing concern. What if something's wrong? What if she's sick and hiding it from us? Then you go check on her, David said firmly. Tomorrow, all 4 of you, together. Which was how, on Tuesday morning, Marcus found himself on a private jet to San Francisco with his 3 siblings, all of them tense and confused and pretending not to be terrified. The drive from SFO to Napa took 90 minutes. 90 minutes of forced small talk and carefully avoided questions. Diana stared out the window at the passing vineyards. Jordan checked his phone compulsively. Nicole, the youngest at 38, twisted her wedding ring around and around. The gate's open, Jordan observed as they turned onto the property. He was 42, a cardiovascular surgeon with their mother's sharp mind and sharper instincts. Mom never leaves the gate open. Maybe she's expecting us, Nicole offered, ever the optimist. As a civil rights attorney, she'd inherited Victoria's fierce idealism. Maybe this is all just a misunderstanding. But Marcus had been in enough boardrooms with his mother to recognize a calculated move when he saw one. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Grace met them at the door, her professional mask firmly in place. Mr. Marcus, Ms. Diana, Dr. Jordan, Ms. Nicole, your mother is in the library. Is she okay? Diana asked immediately. At 44, she ran a venture capital firm and was the family's designated worrier. Grace, please, if something's wrong, that's for her to tell you. But Grace's eyes held something that looked like pity. She's waiting for you. They found Victoria exactly where Grace said, in the floor-to-ceiling library that overlooked the vineyard, sitting in the leather chair that had been her refuge for decades. She was dressed impeccably as always, tailored charcoal slacks, a cream silk blouse, her silver locks styled in an elegant twist. At 71, Victoria Morrison could still command a room without saying a word. She looked up from her book as they entered. Her expression was polite, pleasant even, completely, devastatingly cold. Children, Victoria said, closing her book with a soft sound that somehow felt final. I wondered when you'd come. Mom. Marcus crossed to her instinctively, bending to embrace her. She allowed it, but didn't return it. Her body remained still, unmoved. The difference was subtle, but unmistakable. We were worried. You haven't sent invitations. You haven't been returning calls. Because there won't be a Thanksgiving here this year, Victoria interrupted smoothly. I've made other plans. 4 words. That's all it took to crack the foundation of 43 years. Other plans? Diana's voice came out higher than intended. What other plans? Mom, we always do Thanksgiving together. Always. It's tradition. Traditions evolve. Victoria's tone was conversational, as if discussing a business merger rather than dismantling family history. I've decided to spend the holiday differently this year. With who? Jordan's medical training kicked in automatically. Was this cognitive decline? Early onset dementia? Mom, are you feeling all right? Should I examine you? When was your last checkup? I'm perfectly healthy, Jordan. Thank you for your concern, though I notice it only appears when my behavior becomes inconvenient for you. Victoria stood with fluid grace, moving to the window. I'll be spending Thanksgiving with friends, people who value my company rather than my checkbook. The words landed like a grenade. Marcus felt his face flush. That's not fair. Isn't it? Victoria turned, and the afternoon light illuminated her face, still beautiful, still powerful, but carrying an exhaustion Marcus had never noticed before. Marcus, when was the last time you called me just to talk? Not to discuss your hedge fund's quarterly reports, not to ask about releasing more of your trust fund early, but simply to see how I was doing? Marcus's mouth opened, closed. His mind went blank. Diana, when did you last visit without a pitch deck for me to fund? Jordan, when was the last family dinner you initiated rather than just showing up here expecting everything provided? Nicole, darling, when did we last have a conversation that didn't end with you asking for a donation to one of your causes? Each question was surgical, precise, and none of them had an answer. We're busy, Mom, Diana said, but it sounded weak even to her own ears. We have careers, families, responsibilities. So did I. The steel in Victoria's voice, the same steel that had faced down hostile board members and dismissive investors, finally showed through. I built a company from nothing, raised 4 children alone after your father died, maintained friendships, a social life, community involvement, and yet somehow, I always made time for you. Every single soccer game, every graduation, every crisis at 2 a.m., I was there. Because you're our mother, Nicole said softly. Yes, I'm your mother. I'm not your ATM, not your safety net, not your backup plan. Victoria's voice remained calm, but something underneath it was breaking, or had already broken, long ago. Do you want to know what I realized 6 months ago? I couldn't remember the last time one of you asked about my life. My dreams, what I wanted. Every conversation is about what I can do for you, what I can give you, how I can solve your problems with money. That's what parents do, Marcus heard himself say. They support their children. Children? Victoria's laugh was bitter. You're all in your 40s and 50s. You're not children. And I'm not just a parent. I'm a person. A woman who spent 71 years building a life, and the last 43 watching that life become secondary to everyone else's needs. She walked to her desk and picked up a folder. When she turned back, her expression was composed again, businesslike. I'm not hosting Thanksgiving, or Christmas, or any holiday for the foreseeable future. She handed Marcus the folder. I've made some changes. You should read these. Marcus opened the folder with trembling hands. Legal documents. Pages and pages of them. What is this? His voice came out hoarse. A restructuring of my estate plan. The trust funds are being dissolved. Effective immediately. The room went silent except for the ticking of the antique clock on the mantel. What? Diana's voice was barely a whisper. You're all financially successful in your own right. You don't need my money, you just want it. So I'm redirecting it to people and organizations that will actually use it to make a difference. Victoria's tone was matter-of-fact. The Morrison Foundation will receive the bulk of my estate, scholarships for underprivileged students, grants for Black women entrepreneurs, programs that actually change lives instead of just padding bank accounts. You can't do this, Jordan said, but his voice lacked conviction. They all knew she could. I can and I have. My attorneys finalized everything last week. Victoria returned to her chair, suddenly looking every one of her 71 years. You'll each receive a modest inheritance upon my death, enough to cover any genuine emergencies. But the trust funds, the stock portfolios, the real estate investments, those are gone. Mom, Nicole's voice cracked. Why? What did we do? And there it was, the question that had been building for months. Years, decades maybe. Victoria looked at her youngest daughter, the one who'd been closest to her once, before law school and nonprofit work and a demanding career had consumed her. And something in her face softened, just slightly. You forgot me, Victoria said simply. All of you. I became the family bank, the problem solver, the safety net. But none of you saw me as a person anymore. Do you know I spent my 70th birthday alone? Every single one of you was too busy to come. Marcus, you were closing a deal. Diana, you had a conference. Jordan, you had a surgery scheduled. One you could have rescheduled. Nicole, you were at a protest. She paused, letting that sink in. I sat in this house, in this library, and I realized my children don't actually want me in their lives. They want my resources, my connections, my money, but not me. That's not true, Marcus protested, but his voice was weak. Because wasn't it? When had he last visited just to visit? When had he last asked about her book club or her garden or the oil painting class she'd mentioned taking up? He couldn't remember. None of them could. I'm going to Martha's Vineyard for Thanksgiving, Victoria continued. I've rented a house there, small, intimate. I've invited 6 friends, women I've known for years who actually call to see how I'm doing, who remember my birthday, who value my presence, not my presence. So that's it? Diana's voice rose, anger finally breaking through the shock. You're just cutting us off? Financially and emotionally? No, Diana. You cut me off emotionally years ago. I'm just finally matching your energy. Victoria stood again, and this time her movement toward the door was unmistakable. I love you. All of you. I always will. But I'm done being used. I'm done being convenient. I'm done pouring everything into relationships that only flow one direction. She paused at the library door, looking back at her 4 children, successful, accomplished, and completely blindsided. Grace will show you out. I have a 5 p.m. flight to catch. Mom? Wait! Nicole started forward. Goodbye, children. I hope you have a lovely Thanksgiving. Truly. Victoria's voice was gentle but final. Maybe next year we can build something real. But first, you need to figure out who I actually am beyond my bank account. She left, just walked out of the library, out of their lives, at least for now, leaving them standing in stunned silence. What just happened? Nicole whispered. Marcus stared at the legal documents in his hands, at the life he'd built on the foundation of his mother's wealth and support, at the truth he'd been avoiding for years. They'd taken her for granted. All of them. treated her like a resource instead of a person. And now... "She left us," Diana said, her voice hollow. "Our mother actually left us." "No," Jordan said quietly, staring at the empty doorway. "We left her first." She just finally noticed. The drive back to San Francisco was silent, each of them lost in their own thoughts, their own guilt, their own dawning realization of just how badly they'd failed. Marcus's phone buzzed as they approached the city. A text from an unknown number. He opened it and felt his breath catch. A photo. His mother, laughing. Really laughing, head thrown back, joy radiating from her face. She was on a beach, Martha's Vineyard, presumably, surrounded by 5 other black women of various ages, all of them beaming at the camera. Behind them, the ocean sparkled in the late afternoon sun. The caption read, "This is what happiness looks like. Maybe someday you'll understand." Mom Marcus stared at the photo, at his mother's face, more alive and free than he'd seen it in... how long? Years? Had it been years since he'd seen her genuinely happy? "What is it?" Diana leaned over to look. Her face crumpled when she saw it. "Oh my God." The photo made its way around the car. Jordan's jaw tightened. Nicole started crying silently. "We really fucked this up," Diana whispered. "Yeah," Marcus said. "We really did." His phone buzzed again. Another text, this time from Grace. "Your mother asked me to send you her Thanksgiving menu from last year. Thought you might want to see what you're missing." The attachment loaded. A detailed menu, dishes Victoria had clearly spent days planning and preparing. Handwritten notes in the margins. Marcus's favorite, Diana requested this last year, Jordan can't eat gluten. Substitute here, Nicole's kids love this. Every single dish had been chosen with one of them in mind. Customized. Perfected. Made with love for people who'd never once asked what she wanted to eat. "We need to fix this," Nicole said firmly, wiping her eyes. "We need to make this right." "How?" Jordan asked. "She's serious about this, Nick. I know that look. She's not backing down." "Then we don't ask her to back down." Marcus was already typing on his phone, his mind shifting into the strategic mode that had made him successful. "We prove to her that we get it, that we're willing to change, to be better." "How do we do that?" Diana asked. Marcus looked at his siblings, flawed, self-absorbed, but still his family, still their mother's children. "We start by actually getting to know who she is," he said. "Beyond Mom, beyond Victoria Morrison, billionaire philanthropist. Who is she? What does she love? What are her dreams? Do any of us even know?" The silence that followed was answer enough. "Then that's where we start," Marcus said. "We learn, we listen, and we prove that we love her for who she is, not what she can give us." "And if she doesn't forgive us?" Nicole's voice was small. Marcus looked back at the photo on his phone, at his mother's joy-filled face. "Then we keep trying anyway," he said quietly. "Because that's what you do when you love someone. You show up. You put in the work. You become worthy of them." "Even if it's too late?" Diana asked. "Especially if it's too late," Jordan said softly. "We owe her that much." They drove the rest of the way in silence, each of them beginning to understand the massive distance between who they'd been and who they needed to become. Behind them, in Napa Valley, Victoria Morrison's estate stood empty for the first time in 43 years, and in Martha's Vineyard, for the first time in longer than she could remember, Victoria was genuinely, completely free. Thanksgiving morning arrived gray and cold in Manhattan. Marcus woke at 5 a.m., not because of his usual alarm, but because he hadn't really slept. He'd spent the night scrolling through old photos on his phone, searching for evidence that he'd been a good son, that he'd paid attention, that he'd cared about his mother beyond what she could provide. The evidence was damning in its absence. There were dozens of photos from family gatherings at the Napa estate. Marcus with his mother at Christmas, Diana and Victoria at someone's wedding, Jordan's kids opening presents with their grandmother. But in every single photo, they were at her house, on her property, surrounded by her wealth. Marcus couldn't find a single photo of any of them visiting his mother elsewhere. Not one picture of her at their homes, at their kids' school plays, at their offices or favorite restaurants or any space that was theirs, not hers. When had she stopped existing outside of Napa Valley for them? His phone buzzed. The family group chat. Diana. Anyone else not sleeping? Jordan. Haven't slept in 36 hours. Keep thinking about that menu Grace sent. Nicole. I called Mom's assistant at the foundation. Asked what Mom's been working on lately. You know what I realized? I haven't asked her about her work in 5 years. 5 years. Marcus. We need to talk. In person. Today. Diana. It's Thanksgiving. Marcus. Exactly. Meet at my place. 10 a.m. They gathered in Marcus's Tribeca loft at 10 on the dot, a small miracle considering holidays usually meant everyone scattered to their own elaborate plans. David, bless him, had already set out coffee and pastries, then disappeared to give them privacy. I made a list, Nicole said without preamble, pulling out her phone. Everything I know about Mom. Real things, not just she's generous or she built a company. Actual facts about who she is as a person. She held up her phone. The list was shockingly short. She loves mystery novels, I think. She mentioned it once. She gardens, obviously. She took an oil painting class, maybe? And she's part of some book club, though I don't know with who or what they read. Nicole's voice cracked. That's it. That's everything I know about my own mother's life outside of being our mother. Jesus, Jordan muttered. He was still in his scrubs from his overnight shift, hadn't even gone home. I know more about my patients than that. I tried to remember the last real conversation we had, Diana said, staring into her coffee. Not small talk at family dinners, not logistics about holidays. A real conversation where I asked about her life and actually listened to the answer. She looked up, eyes red. I can't remember one. Not in years. Marcus felt sick. What have we become? Entitled assholes, Jordan said bluntly. That's what. We treated Mom like a service provider. Show up, get fed, get funded, leave. Repeat next holiday. It wasn't always like this, Nicole protested weakly. When we were kids, we needed her, Marcus interrupted. She was everything to us. But then we grew up, got successful, got busy, and instead of transitioning into an adult relationship with her, we just automated it. Kept showing up for the benefits without putting in any actual effort. Dad's death changed things too, Diana said quietly. She threw herself into work after that. Built the company into what it is. We were all dealing with our own grief. Maybe we just drifted apart. Dad died 20 years ago, Jordan said flatly. That excuse expired about 19 years ago. The truth of it hung in the air, ugly and undeniable. So what do we do? Nicole asked. Show up in Martha's vineyard and apologize? Promise to do better? Would you believe us if you were her? Marcus asked. If you'd spent years being used, and suddenly the people using you showed up with apologies right after you cut off their money? No, Nicole admitted. I'd think it was just more manipulation. Exactly. Marcus pulled out his laptop. So we don't apologize. Not yet. First, we prove we mean it. We learn who she actually is. We show up for her life, not just for family obligations at her house. We become people worthy of her time and love. How? Diana demanded. She's not even talking to us. We start with the people who do know her. Marcus had already opened his browser. Grace said Mom's spending Thanksgiving with 6 friends, women she's known for years. We need to find out who they are. That feels like stalking, Nicole said uncomfortably. It is stalking, Jordan agreed. But it's also the only way we're going to understand what we've been missing. Mom's not going to tell us. She's done explaining herself to us. So we have to figure it out ourselves. Marcus was already typing. Grace mentioned the book club, and Mom's on the board of several nonprofits. We start there. It took 3 days of calls, internet searches, and swallowing their pride to track down the information. Grace was professionally unhelpful, clearly Team Victoria all the way. But Marcus's assistant was resourceful, and Diana knew how to leverage her network. By Sunday, they had names. Margaret Chen, 68, professor of African American literature at Berkeley. Met Victoria through a W.E.B. Du Bois symposium 15 years ago. Co-founder of their book club. Lorraine Baptiste, 73, retired federal judge. Victoria's college roommate at Stanford, maintained friendship for 50 years, despite living on opposite coasts. Dr. Biwa. Simone Washington, 66, cardiologist and medical researcher. Met Victoria through charity work, became close friends after bonding over being Black women breaking barriers in their fields. Patricia Trish Okafor, 69, owner of a successful catering company in San Francisco. Victoria's friend since the early days of building Morrison Tech. She'd catered Victoria's first major investor meeting. Janet Rodriguez, 65, artist and gallery owner. Victoria had taken painting classes at her studio for the past 3 years. Denise Armstrong, 70, retired executive and world traveler. Met Victoria at a women's leadership conference 2 decades ago. These women have been in Mom's life for years, Nicole said, staring at the information spread across Marcus's dining table. Decades, some of them. And I've never heard of any of them. She never talked about them, Diana said. Or did she, and we just never listened? Marcus's stomach twisted as a memory surfaced. Victoria mentioning something about book club, and Marcus interrupting to ask about increasing his quarterly distribution from the trust. How many times had he done that? How many stories had she started to tell before he'd changed the subject to himself? Lorraine Baptiste, Jordan said suddenly. That name sounds familiar. He pulled out his phone, searching. Oh my God, she's famous. She was the first Black woman appointed to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. She wrote that landmark opinion on voting rights. How did I not know Mom was friends with her? Because we never asked, Marcus said quietly. Mom could have been friends with Oprah and we wouldn't have known. Because we never asked about her life. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Morrison? An unfamiliar female voice, warm but businesslike. This is Margaret Chen. I'm a friend of your mother's. Marcus's heart stopped. Professor Chen, Yes. How did you get this number? Your mother gave it to me, along with your siblings' numbers. She wanted me to call. A pause. May I speak frankly? Please. Your mother is one of the most remarkable women I've ever known. She's brilliant, compassionate, funny, and deeply thoughtful. She's also been heartbroken for years over her relationship with her children. Margaret's voice was kind but firm. I'm calling because she's finally started to heal, finally started to remember who she is beyond being your mother. And I need to know, are you going to let her have that? Or are you going to pull her back into the same painful dynamic? Marcus felt tears burning behind his eyes. We want to make it right. That's not what I asked. I asked if you're going to let her heal, even if that means giving her space, even if that means she chooses not to have the relationship with you that you want. Can you love her enough to let her be happy, even if that happiness doesn't include you? The question cut straight to the bone. Marcus's voice failed. Could he? Could he love his mother enough to let her go? She thinks you can't, Margaret said gently. She thinks you only want her back because you want access to her resources. Prove her wrong. Not with words, with actions. Show up for her life without expecting anything in return. Learn who she is. Respect her boundaries. Become people she wants in her life, not people who feel entitled to be there. How? Marcus asked desperately. How do we do that? Start by actually seeing her. Really seeing her. Not as your mother, not as Victoria Morrison the billionaire, but as Victoria, a 71-year-old woman who loves art and good books and long conversations, who dreams about traveling more, who's been lonely in a house full of family for longer than you realize. Margaret paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer. She's in Martha's vineyard right now, laughing more than I've heard in years. She went kayaking yesterday. Did you know she loves kayaking? She's taking a pottery class next week. She's talking about maybe spending next summer in Portugal. She's building a life that's hers. And she's terrified that if she lets you back in, you'll take that away from her again. Marcus was openly crying now. I don't want to take anything from her. I want to give. I want to be better. We all do. Then prove it. Not to me, to her. And Mr. Morrison? It's going to take more than a few phone calls and some apologies. It's going to take years of consistent effort, of showing up, of putting her first. Are you prepared for that? Yes, Marcus said without hesitation. And for the first time, he meant it completely. Good. Then here's what you're going to do. The plan Professor Chen outlined was simple but terrifying. Become students of their mother's life. Learn her interests, meet her friends, understand her world, but do it on her terms, at her pace, without demanding forgiveness or reconciliation. You can't force healing, Margaret had said. You can only create space for it and hope she chooses to step into it. That afternoon, Marcus gathered his siblings again. We're going to Napa, he announced. Not to the estate. Mom's not there anyway. But we're going to the places she goes. The bookstore where her book club meets, Janet's art studio where she takes painting classes, the gardens she loves. We're going to walk through her life and finally pay attention. Won't that be weird? Nicole asked. Just showing up at these places? Probably, Jordan agreed. But we owe it to her. We owe it to ourselves. We need to understand what we've been missing. Diana was quiet, scrolling through something on her phone. When she looked up, her eyes were wet. I found Mom's Instagram, she said quietly. I didn't even know she had one. Look. She turned her phone around. Victoria's Instagram was a revelation. Photos of paintings she'd completed, books she was reading, gardens she'd visited, coffee dates with friends Marcus had never heard of. A whole rich life, documented carefully, shared with 847 followers who clearly knew and loved her. None of her children followed the account. Oh, God, Nicole whispered, looking at post after post of their mother's life that they'd completely ignored. We really weren't paying attention at all. No, Marcus said. We weren't. But we're going to start. Right now. He hit the follow button. Then Diana. Then Jordan and Nicole. Within minutes, Victoria's follower count went from 847 to 851. And in Martha's vineyard, Victoria's phone buzzed with 4 notifications. She looked at them, her expression unreadable. Margaret, sitting across from her with a glass of wine, raised an eyebrow. They followed you, Victoria said quietly. Is that good or bad? I don't know. Victoria stared at her phone, at her children's profile pictures. Photos she recognized from years ago, none of them updated recently. It might be a start, or it might be another manipulation. Give them a chance to show you which one it is, Margaret suggested gently. And if they disappoint me again? Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. "Margaret, I can't. I finally feel like myself again. I can't go back to being just their resource." "You won't. Because this time, you know your worth. This time, you have boundaries. This time, you'll walk away the moment they cross the line." Margaret reached across the table and squeezed her friend's hand. "But don't deny yourself the possibility of real relationship with them just because you're scared." Victoria looked out at the ocean, gray and turbulent under the November sky. Somewhere in California, her children were, what? Planning their next move? Figuring out how to get back in her good graces? Or maybe, just maybe, actually trying to understand what they'd done wrong. She wanted to believe the latter. Desperately wanted to believe her children were capable of growth. But 43 years of experience told her otherwise. "I'll think about it," Victoria said finally. "That's all I can promise." "That's all anyone can ask," Margaret replied. 1 week later, Marcus stood outside Brushstrokes, Janet Rodriguez's art studio in downtown Napa, feeling more nervous than he had before any business pitch. Through the window, he could see an evening painting class in session. A dozen adults working on canvases while an elegant woman with silver-streaked black hair moved between them offering guidance. Janet Rodriguez, his mother's painting teacher, her friend. He pushed open the door. The smell of acrylic paint and turpentine washed over him. Janet looked up. Her eyes narrowed slightly, recognition and assessment in one glance. "Marcus Morrison," she said, not unkindly but not warmly either. "Your mother said you might show up eventually." "She did?" Marcus's heart leapt. She was talking about him? Expecting him? "She said her children had finally noticed she existed. Wasn't sure if you'd do anything about it or not." Janet wiped her hands on a paint-stained apron. "Class is almost over. You can wait." Marcus waited, watched Janet work with her students, praising one woman's color choices, gently suggesting another student try a different brush technique. She was a natural teacher, patient, encouraging, genuinely delighted by her students' progress. Had his mother been one of these students? Had she stood at one of these easels, learning to paint, creating something beautiful with her own hands while her children were too busy to notice? The class ended. Students packed up their supplies, chatting and laughing. Janet walked over to Marcus, arms crossed. "What do you want?" "Direct. No games." "To understand," Marcus said honestly. "To learn who my mother is. Professor Chen said she comes here, that she's been taking classes for 3 years. I didn't know that. I should have known that." Janet's expression softened slightly. "She's talented. Natural eye for color and composition. Works in abstracts mostly. Says it helps her process emotion." She walked to a storage closet and pulled out a canvas. "She left this here. Said she'd pick it up after Thanksgiving." She turned the canvas around, and Marcus's breath caught. The painting was abstract but unmistakably emotional. Deep blues and purples swirling around a central point of gold like a storm around a sun, or a family around a mother. Dark and beautiful and achingly sad. "She painted this," Marcus whispered. "About 6 months ago, right around when she started making changes." Janet looked at the painting with obvious affection. "She called it, 'Finally Seeing Myself.'" Marcus stared at the painting, at his mother's inner world expressed in color and texture, at the loneliness she'd been carrying that none of them had noticed. "I'm going to do better," he said. "I don't know if she'll forgive us, but I'm going to do better anyway." Janet studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "There's a beginner's painting class starting next month. Tuesday and Thursday evenings, 6 to 8. Your mother usually comes to the Tuesday intermediate class that runs before it." She raised an eyebrow. "You interested?" "Yes," Marcus said immediately. "I'll be here." Don't do this just to impress her, Janet warned. Do it because you actually want to understand this part of her life. Victoria will see through anything less than genuine effort. I know, Marcus said. I'm starting to understand that. Over the next 2 weeks, the Morrison siblings scattered across California, each following threads of their mother's life they'd never bothered to notice before. Diana showed up at the community foundation where Victoria served on the board, sat through a 3-hour meeting about grant allocations, actually listened to her mother's proxy voice, through another board member, advocating for programs supporting single mothers. Your mother's been our most passionate advocate, the board chair told Diana afterward. She's helped secure funding for over 200 families in crisis. Does she talk about this work at home? I never asked, Diana admitted, shame burning through her. Jordan tracked down Dr. Simone Washington, who reluctantly agreed to meet him for coffee. Your mother and I met at a medical fundraiser 12 years ago, Simone told him. We were the only black women in a room full of white male donors. We bonded over that. Over being brilliant and accomplished, and still having to work twice as hard for half the recognition. She stirred her coffee. We talk every week. About medicine, about life, about what it means to build something meaningful. She's one of my closest friends. Does she talk about us? Jordan asked quietly. Simone's silence was answer enough. Nicole found Trish Okafor's catering company in Oakland, showed up unannounced and was put to work immediately. Trish had a wedding that weekend and was short-staffed. You Victoria's youngest? Trish asked, eyeing Nicole critically. You look like her. Same eyes. Did she talk about me? Nicole asked hopefully. Talked about all of you. How proud she was. How she wished you'd call more. How she'd planned these elaborate Thanksgivings hoping one of you would offer to help cook. To spend time with her in the kitchen instead of just showing up when dinner was ready. Trish handed Nicole a knife and pointed at vegetables. Start chopping. If you want to understand your mother, start by learning what she gives to others. Nicole chopped vegetables for 4 hours. Her hands cramped, her back ached. But she also listened to Trish's stories about Victoria, about the early days of Morrison Tech when Victoria had no money for catering, but Trish had donated her services anyway because she believed in her. About late-night phone calls when they both needed someone who understood the struggle of building something from nothing. Your mother is loyal, Trish said. Once you're in her circle, she's there for life. But you have to earn your way into that circle. You don't get there just by being born. The words stung. But they were true. On December 10th, Marcus's phone rang at 7 a.m. His mother's number. His hands shook as he answered. Mom? Hello, Marcus. Victoria's voice was neutral, carefully controlled. I heard you've been visiting Janet, and that Diana attended a foundation meeting, and Jordan had coffee with Simone, and Nicole worked an event with Trish. Yes. Marcus's heart was pounding. We're trying to understand, to learn, to be better. Why now? The question was direct, clinical. Why not 5 years ago? 10 years ago? Why wait until I cut off the money? Marcus closed his eyes. This was it, the moment of truth. Because we're selfish, he said simply. Because we took you for granted. Because we forgot you were a person with a life beyond serving us. And we're sorry. Not because we want the trust funds back. Keep them, donate them, burn them. We're sorry because we hurt you. Because we failed you as children, as adults, as human beings. Silence on the other end. Long enough that Marcus thought she might have hung up. Then, I'm going to Portugal in January. For a month. I've rented a villa in the Algarve. I'll be taking painting classes and learning to surf and reading everything Margaret's been recommending. That sounds amazing, Marcus said honestly. It does, doesn't it? For the first time, he heard a hint of warmth in her voice. I'm excited, terrified but excited. I've spent 71 years being what everyone else needed. I'm ready to figure out who I am when I'm just Victoria. You deserve that, Mom. You deserve all of it. Another pause. Then, Janet tells me you signed up for her painting class. I did. I won't be any good at it, but I want to try. I want to understand why you love it. And Diana's joining the foundation board properly. And Jordan's volunteered to do free cardiovascular screenings at Simone's community health clinic. And Nicole's working with Trish to organize a fundraiser for single mothers. Marcus smiled despite his tears. His siblings had been busy too. We're trying, Mom. I know it's not enough. I know it doesn't erase years of neglect. But we're trying to become people worthy of you. I don't need you to be worthy of me, Victoria said softly. I need you to see me. Really see me. Not as your mother or your benefactor, but as Victoria. A woman with dreams and fears and hopes. A person who exists beyond what she can give you. I'm seeing you now, Marcus whispered. And Mom, you're amazing. I'm sorry it took me so long to notice. He heard her breath catch. Was she crying? I'm not ready yet, Victoria said finally. To have you back fully. I'm still healing, still figuring out who I am without the weight of disappointing my children hanging over me. I know. Take all the time you need. But Marcus... Her voice was warmer now, almost like it used to be years ago before everything got complicated. Thank you for trying, for listening to my friends, for actually putting in the work instead of just apologizing and expecting everything to go back to normal. We're going to keep trying, Marcus promised, whether you take us back or not. We're going to keep showing up, keep learning, keep being better. Then maybe, Victoria said quietly, maybe by next Thanksgiving we can try again? Build something new, something real? I'd like that, Mom. I'd really like that. After they hung up, Marcus sat in his kitchen and cried. Grief and hope and shame and love all tangled together. He'd lost years with his mother, years of conversations and moments and connection that he could never get back. But maybe, just maybe, there was still time to build something better. The package arrived at Marcus's office on a gray Tuesday afternoon. Inside was a small canvas, maybe 8 by 10 inches, wrapped in tissue paper. No note, just a return address from the Algarve region of Portugal. Marcus unwrapped it with trembling hands. The painting was abstract, but warmer than the piece he'd seen at Janet's studio. Golds and oranges and soft pinks like a sunrise, or maybe a new beginning. In the bottom right corner, his mother's signature, V. Morrison. Underneath, in her elegant handwriting, keep going. Mom Marcus's assistant found him 20 minutes later, still staring at the painting with tears running down his face. Mr. Morrison? Your 2 p.m. is here. She stopped. Are you all right? Yeah, Marcus said, wiping his eyes. Yeah, I'm good. Actually, cancel my afternoon. I need to go shopping. Shopping? I need to buy painting supplies. Lots of them. Diana's story. The Community Foundation board meeting ran long. They always did. Diana had learned that in the 3 months since she'd officially joined. What she hadn't expected was how much she'd come to look forward to these meetings. The Morrison Family Scholarship Fund disbursed $400,000 this quarter, the program director was reporting. 20 students received full rides to state universities. 15 of them are first-generation college students. 10 are from single-parent households. Diana listened to the statistics and thought about her mother, building this program quietly, funding dreams for families who'd never had the resources she'd built. Doing it without fanfare, without press releases, without even telling her own children. Miss Morrison? The board chair was looking at her. You had a proposal for expanding the program? Diana pulled out her presentation. She'd worked on it for weeks, researching, consulting with educators, thinking about what her mother would want. "I'd like to propose the Victoria Morrison Mentorship Initiative," Diana began, "pairing scholarship recipients with established professionals in their fields, not just throwing money at education, building relationships, creating community, giving students what money can't buy, guidance, connection, and someone who believes in them." She clicked to the next slide. "My mother built Morrison Tech without mentors, without a network. She succeeded despite having to figure everything out alone. This program would ensure no student has to do the same." The room was silent. Then Margaret Chen, who'd joined the board 2 months ago at Victoria's invitation, started clapping. "That's brilliant," Margaret said, "and exactly the kind of systemic thinking Victoria's always advocated for. Have you shared this with her?" "Not yet," Diana admitted. "I wanted to make sure the board supported it first. I didn't want to get her hopes up just to have it rejected." "She'll love it," another board member said. "When do we vote?" The program passed unanimously. After the meeting, Margaret pulled Diana aside. "Walk with me," she said. They strolled through the Foundation's garden, a space Victoria had designed and funded, filled with native California plants and peaceful walking paths. "Your mother created this garden 5 years ago," Margaret said. "She wanted a place where scholarship recipients could come, where stressed students could find peace. She planted every tree herself." Diana stopped walking. "She did?" "She'd come here on weekends, get her hands dirty. She said it helped her think." Margaret touched a young oak tree gently. This was her favorite. She called it her hope tree. Said it would outlive her, keep growing long after she was gone, keep providing shade for students who needed it. Diana felt tears burning. "I never knew she gardened." "She never told you because you never asked." Margaret's voice wasn't cruel, just honest. "But you're asking now. You're listening now. That matters, Diana. Growth takes time, but it's happening." Is Mom doing okay?" Diana asked quietly. "In Portugal?" Margaret smiled. "She's thriving. She learned to surf. Can you imagine? Your 71-year-old mother on a surfboard. She sent me pictures. She looked so happy, Diana. So free." "I want her to be happy," Diana said, and meant it. "Even if she never forgives us, even if we're not part of that happiness, I want her to have that." "That's love," Margaret said softly. "Real love. The kind that wants what's best for someone even when it costs you something. Your mother is starting to see that in you, in all of you. It's why she sent Marcus that painting." "She did?" Diana pulled out her phone. Sure enough, the family group chat had a photo Marcus had posted hours ago. The sunrise painting. His mother's note. "She's testing you," Margaret explained, "seeing if you'll keep putting in the work even when she's not here watching, even when there's no immediate reward. So far, you're all passing." "What happens when she comes back?" Diana asked. "In March, right? When she returns from Portugal?" "That's up to her, and up to you." Margaret started walking again. "But Diana, whatever happens, keep doing this work. Not for her, for yourself. For the students whose lives you're changing. For the person you're becoming." Diana looked around the garden her mother had built. Legacy growing quietly, roots going deep, providing shade for people who'd never even know her name. "I will," Diana promised. "Whatever happens with Mom, I'll keep going." Jordan's story. The community health clinic in East Oakland was nothing like the gleaming hospital where Jordan usually worked. The floors were scuffed, the equipment was outdated, the waiting room was packed with people who couldn't afford his usual consultation fees. It was exactly where he needed to be. "Dr. Morrison?" Simone Washington appeared in scrubs, looking exhausted. "Ready for your shift?" Ready. Jordan had been volunteering every Saturday for 2 months now. Free cardiovascular screenings for anyone who walked through the door. We've got about 40 patients waiting, Simone said as they walked toward the screening area. Mostly uninsured or underinsured, lots of hypertension, diabetes complications. We'll do what we can. What they could do was considerable. Jordan had brought his own ultrasound equipment, top of the line, equipment that cost more than the clinic's annual budget. He'd taught the clinic's nurses how to use it, set up a system for flagging high-risk patients for follow-up care. Mr. Johnson, Jordan called the first patient. Come on back. George Johnson was 63, worked 2 jobs, hadn't seen a doctor in 5 years, couldn't afford to. 20 minutes later, Jordan had diagnosed severe mitral valve regurgitation. You need surgery, Jordan said gently. Your heart valve is leaking. If we don't fix it, can't afford surgery, Doc. George's voice was resigned. No insurance. Even with Medicaid, the copays alone would bankrupt me. Jordan had heard this a dozen times already. Patients who needed care they couldn't access. In his usual practice, he'd write a referral and move on. But here, looking at George's tired face, thinking about his mother's quiet advocacy for people like this. What if I could get you into surgery? Jordan said slowly, an idea forming. No cost to you. What if I could make that happen? How? Let me make some calls. By the end of his shift, Jordan had called in favors from 3 colleagues, negotiated with his hospital's charity care program, and personally committed to covering any gaps in George's care costs. Simone found him in the break room afterward, looking dazed. You just spent about $50,000 of your own money on a patient you met 3 hours ago, she observed. Yeah. Jordan laughed shakily. My accountant is going to kill me. Your mother would be proud. Jordan looked up. You think so? I know so. This is exactly what Victoria does. Sees a need and fills it, regardless of cost. She's been funding care for patients like George for years through the foundation. Quietly, without recognition. Simone sat down. She never told you? No. We never asked what she was spending money on. We just asked for more of it. Jordan rubbed his face. How did we become such assholes? You were raised wealthy, Simone said pragmatically. It's easy to forget that money represents real impact when you've always had it. But you're remembering now. You're using your privilege for good. That's what matters. I want to do more, Jordan said. The Morrison Foundation. Could we start a cardiac care fund? Cover surgeries for people who can't afford them? Take that up with the board, and with your mother when she's back. Simone smiled. But yes, I think she'd support that. It's exactly the kind of systemic change she believes in. Jordan pulled out his phone and opened his mother's Instagram. He checked it daily now, hungry for glimpses into her life. Her latest post was from yesterday, a photo of her on a surfboard, in the water, grinning like a kid. The caption read, "Fell off about 40 times before I got this shot. Turns out you're never too old to learn something new, or to get back up after falling. Algarve life. #new beginnings. Never too late." The comments were full of encouragement from her friends, people who knew and loved her, who celebrated her wins and supported her growth. Her children hadn't commented yet. Jordan typed, "Proud of you, Mom. Can't wait to hear all about it. Love you." He hit send before he could second-guess it. Within minutes, a small heart appeared on his comment. From his mother's account. It was the smallest thing, but it felt like everything. Nicole's story. The fundraiser was Nicole's first real event planning experience, and it showed. The caterer is running late, half the auction items haven't arrived, and someone double-booked the ballroom, Nicole's assistant reported, barely concealing panic. Nicole took a deep breath. Channel Mom, she thought. Victoria had organized hundreds of events. How had she made it look effortless? Then Nicole realized her mother had probably never done it alone. "Call Trish," Nicole said. "Tell her we have a catering crisis and I'm begging for help. Call the auction donors directly. Be honest about the mistake. Ask them to bring items personally if they can. And for the ballroom," she thought fast, "offer the other party double their deposit to reschedule. We'll cover it." "With what budget?" "Mine. Personal funds. This event is happening." 3 hours later, Trish showed up with her entire team and enough backup food to feed an army. "Your mother called me," Trish said. "From Portugal. Said her daughter needed help and wasn't too proud to ask for it. That's a first, apparently." "She called you?" Nicole's eyes filled with tears. "From Portugal?" "Woke up at 3 a.m. her time to call. That's what mothers do." Trish started directing her team. "Now let's save this fundraiser. Who are we raising money for again?" "Single mothers, emergency assistance fund, rent, utilities, childcare, whatever they need to stay stable during crisis." Nicole had chosen the cause deliberately. It was the demographic her mother cared most about. The demographic Victoria herself had once been, raising 4 kids alone after their father died. The event was a success. They raised $340,000, more than triple their goal. Nicole stood at the podium for closing remarks, looking out at the crowd of donors. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began. "This fund means a lot to me personally. My mother raised 4 children alone after my father passed away. She built a billion-dollar company while making sure we had everything we needed. She never asked for help, never complained, just did what needed to be done." Her voice caught. "I didn't appreciate that until recently. Didn't understand the sacrifice, the loneliness, the weight of being everything to everyone while having no one to lean on yourself. This fund is for women like my mother was. Women who are doing the impossible every day. Women who deserve support, not just admiration." The room was silent. "My mother is in Portugal right now," Nicole continued, "living her best life, learning to surf at 71, finally doing things for herself instead of everyone else. And I'm so proud of her. So grateful that she finally chose herself. So hopeful that someday she'll let us back into her life, not as takers, but as givers. Not as children demanding everything, but as adults ready to support her the way she's always supported us." She paused, looking directly at the camera she knew was streaming the event. "Mom, if you're watching, I love you. I see you now. Really see you. And I promise to spend the rest of my life making sure you know you're valued for who you are, not what you give. Thank you for teaching me, double, even when you had to walk away to do it." The room erupted in applause. Later, Nicole's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, but she knew who it was. "I'm watching. You did beautifully. The fund will change lives. So will you, if you keep going like this. Love you, sweetheart." Mom. Nicole sat in the empty ballroom after everyone had left and cried. Relief, joy, hope. Everything she'd been holding in for months. Her mother had called her sweetheart. Hadn't called her that in years. Maybe, just maybe, they were finding their way back to each other. March 15th, Victoria's return. Victoria's flight landed at SFO at 4 p.m. on a Thursday. She'd been gone for nearly 4 months, the longest she'd ever been away from California. She collected her luggage, cleared customs, and walked into the arrivals hall expecting to find Grace with the car. Instead, she found her 4 children, Marcus, Diana, Jordan, Nicole. Standing together, holding a sign that read, "Welcome home, Mom. We missed you." Victoria stopped walking. Just stopped, in the middle of the terminal, staring at them. What are you doing here? Her voice came out shakier than she'd intended. We wanted to be the first people you saw, Marcus said, stepping forward cautiously. If that's okay. If it's too much, we can leave, but we just wanted you to know we've been counting the days until you came back, Diana finished. Victoria looked at her children, really looked at them. Marcus had paint under his fingernails. Diana wore a foundation pin on her jacket. Jordan looked exhausted but peaceful. Nicole's eyes were hopeful but cautious. Respecting Victoria's space. They'd changed. Or maybe she was just finally seeing them clearly. Victoria's voice failed. She cleared her throat. I wasn't expecting you. We know, Jordan said. We weren't sure if we should come, but we wanted you to know we've been working, growing, trying to become people worthy of you. You don't have to be worthy of me, Victoria said automatically. Yes, we do, Nicole said firmly. You deserved better than what we gave you. You deserve children who see you, who value you, who love you for who you are. We're trying to be those children now. We know we're not there yet, but we're trying. Victoria felt tears threatening. She'd promised herself she wouldn't cry at the airport, wouldn't let her guard down, would maintain boundaries and protect her newfound peace. But looking at her children, seeing genuine remorse and effort and love, the walls she'd so carefully built started to crack. Tell me about Portugal, Marcus said gently. We saw your Instagram posts. Surfing looked incredible. It was terrifying, Victoria admitted, surprising herself. I fell off approximately 1,000 times, but Margaret dared me to try and... She smiled despite herself. And it felt amazing. Scary and hard and amazing. You looked happy, Diana said. Really happy. We're glad you went. So am I. Victoria studied her daughter. I heard about the mentorship program. Margaret told me. Diana flushed. I should have told you myself. I wanted it approved first. Didn't want to disappoint you if it failed. It's brilliant, Victoria interrupted. Exactly what the foundation needs, what students need. I'm proud of you, Diana. Diana's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. And Jordan, Victoria turned to her son. Simone told me what you've been doing at the clinic, the patients you've been helping, the cardiac care fund proposal. It's not enough, Jordan said, but it's a start. I want to do more, want to use my skills to help people who can't usually access them, the way you've been doing for years without telling us. I didn't need recognition, Victoria said. We know, but you deserved it. Deserved to be seen and celebrated for the incredible work you do. Jordan's voice was thick with emotion. I'm sorry it took so long for us to notice. Victoria turned to Nicole, her youngest. Your fundraiser was beautiful. I watched the whole thing from my villa. You did? Every minute. Your speech. Victoria's voice caught. Nicole, that was one of the most moving things I've ever heard. You saw me. Finally saw me. Do you know how long I've waited for that? Too long, Nicole whispered. Way too long. I'm sorry, Mom. For all of it. They stood in the middle of SFO's arrivals hall, 5 people who'd lost each other and were now fumbling toward reconnection. It was awkward and emotional and imperfect. It was also real. More real than their relationship had been in years. I'm not ready yet, Victoria said finally. To go back to how things were. I can't be your safety net and your bank and your problem solver. I can't carry the weight of being everything to everyone again. We don't want you to, Marcus said firmly. We want a real relationship, where we support each other, where it flows both ways, where you're allowed to be human and imperfect and make choices that prioritize your own happiness. We want to know you, Diana added. The real you. Victoria, not just Mom. We want to hear about your painting and your book club and your friends. We want to be part of your life instead of expecting you to revolve around ours. And if you need more time, Jordan said, if you need more space, we'll give it to you. We'll wait, however long it takes. Because you're worth waiting for, Nicole finished. You're worth every effort, worth becoming better people for. Victoria looked at her children and felt something shift in her chest. The hurt was still there. Years of neglect couldn't be erased in a few months. But underneath it, something new was growing. Hope. Real hope for a different kind of relationship. Okay, she said softly. Okay, let's try. Try? Marcus's voice was hopeful. Try. Not promises. Not going back to normal, but trying to build something new. Something healthier, with boundaries and honesty and actual effort from everyone. Victoria adjusted her purse on her shoulder. Starting with you carrying my luggage and telling me everything you've learned in the last 4 months. And I mean everything. I want details. Her children practically scrambled for her luggage. Victoria found herself smiling, really smiling, as they argued over who got to carry what. Also, Victoria added as they headed for the parking structure, I'm going back to Portugal in June, for 3 weeks. You're not invited. She watched their faces carefully. Would they protest? Guilt her? Demand to be included? That sounds perfect, Diana said. Send us lots of pictures. We'll plan a proper welcome home when you get back. And we'll actually visit you between now and then, Marcus added. On your schedule, at your convenience, no expectations. I have a painting class Tuesday nights, Victoria said, testing them. It goes until 8 p.m. I won't be available for dinner those evenings. Then we'll see you other nights, Jordan said easily. Whatever works for you, Mom. Victoria felt tears pricking again. They were listening. Really listening, respecting her boundaries without resentment or manipulation. It was more than she'd dared hope for. All right then, she said, linking arms with Nicole as they walked. Let me tell you about the time I fell off my surfboard in front of a group of 20-year-olds and somehow still managed to look dignified. Her children laughed, listened, asked questions. Seemed genuinely interested in her stories, not just waiting for their turn to talk. It wasn't perfect. They had years of damage to repair, patterns to unlearn, trust to rebuild. But for the first time in longer than Victoria could remember, she felt like she had her children back. Not as dependents or obligations or sources of disappointment. As people, as adults, as family. And that, Victoria thought as they loaded her luggage into Marcus's car, was worth every lonely holiday, every difficult boundary, every painful moment of choosing herself. She'd had to lose them to find herself. Now, maybe, just maybe, she could have both. 1 year later, the Napa Valley estate was alive with activity for the first time in 18 months. But this Thanksgiving was different. For starters, Victoria wasn't doing all the cooking. Marcus and his husband David had the turkey. Diana and her wife handled sides. Jordan was in charge of desserts, with help from his kids, who were currently covered in flour and having the time of their lives. Nicole and her husband were setting the table. Victoria sat in her conservatory with a glass of wine, watching her family work together through the windows. Beside her, Margaret Chen smiled knowingly. You look happy, Margaret observed. I am, Victoria said, surprising herself with how true it was. Cautiously, carefully happy, but happy. They've worked hard this year. They have. Victoria couldn't deny it. Monthly dinners that her children had planned and hosted. Visits to her painting class where they actually tried to paint alongside her. Family trips that accommodated her schedule instead of assuming she'd accommodate theirs. Real conversations about real things. Are you glad you came back? Margaret asked. Or do you wish you'd stayed in Portugal? Victoria considered the question seriously. She'd gone back to Portugal twice more this year, once in June as planned and again in September for a women's artist retreat. Both times, her children had sent her off with enthusiasm, had video called to check in without being intrusive, had welcomed her back without resentment. "I'm glad I went," Victoria said finally. "Glad I learned who I was without them. But I'm also glad I gave them a chance to prove they could change, because they have changed. We all have." "Your turn, Victoria," Marcus called from the kitchen. "You're on mashed potatoes." Victoria laughed and stood. "I'm being summoned. By your children, not commanded by them," Margaret noted. "There's a difference." There was. A year ago, it would have been assumed Victoria would handle multiple dishes, manage the entire meal, and accept thanks at the end without anyone acknowledging the work. Now, she had one dish, one contribution to a truly collaborative effort. She walked into the kitchen where her family was working together, laughing, occasionally arguing over cooking techniques, but fundamentally present and engaged. "Mom, settle this," Diana said. "Jordan thinks we should use Greek yogurt in the mashed potatoes. I say butter and cream. What do you think?" A year ago, Victoria would have just made the decision and done it herself. Now, "I think you should try it both ways and see which you prefer," Victoria said. "It's your dish, Diana. Trust your instincts." Diana blinked, then smiled. "Greek yogurt it is, then. Jordan, you're on." The meal came together beautifully. Not perfectly. Jordan's pie crust was a bit overdone, and Marcus had slightly overcooked the turkey, but beautifully in its imperfection. When they sat down to eat, Victoria looked around the table. Her children, their partners, her grandchildren, Margaret and a few other close friends she'd invited. "I want to say something," Victoria said, standing, "before we eat." The table quieted. "Last year, I didn't host Thanksgiving because I needed to find myself again. Needed to remember who I was beyond being a mother and a benefactor and a problem solver. I needed space to breathe and grow and choose myself for once." She paused, looking at each of her children. "You gave me that space. More importantly, you used that time to grow too. To become people who could have a real, reciprocal relationship instead of just taking what I offered. I'm proud of all of you. Proud of the work you've done. Proud of the people you're becoming." "We're proud of you too, Mom," Nicole said softly, "for having the courage to set boundaries, for choosing yourself, for teaching us what real love looks like, even when it's hard." "To new beginnings," Marcus said, raising his glass. "And to second chances." "To family," Diana added. "The real kind, built on respect and effort and actual love." "To Mom," Jordan finished, "for never giving up on us, even when we'd given up on you." They drank. Then they ate. Then they laughed and talked and cleaned up together. Actually, together. Not Victoria doing everything while her children disappeared. Later, as the evening wound down and guests started leaving, Victoria stood on her terrace looking out at the vineyard. The vines were bare now, dormant for winter, but come spring, they'd bloom again, produce fruit again, make something beautiful again. Marcus found her there. "Thank you for letting us try again," he said quietly, "for not giving up on us permanently." "Thank you for doing the work," Victoria replied, "for becoming people I actually want in my life, not just people I'm obligated to include because we share DNA." "Harsh," Marcus said, but he was smiling. "Honest," Victoria corrected. "We're doing honesty now, remember?" "Right. Honesty." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Then honestly, I wasted years I could have spent knowing you, learning from you, being there for you the way you were always there for us. I can't get those years back." "No," Victoria agreed. "You can't. None of us can. But we have now. We have future years. That's worth something." It's worth everything, Marcus said. I love you, Mom. The real you. Victoria, the painter, and the reader, and the surfer, and the woman with dreams and fears, and a whole life we never bothered to see. I love all of you. Victoria felt tears, happy tears this time, sliding down her cheeks. I love you too, Marcus. I always have. I just needed you to love me back, all of me, not just what I could give you. I do now, Marcus said. We all do. And we're going to keep showing you, every day, for the rest of our lives. They stood together, mother and son, looking out at the land Victoria had cultivated for decades. The legacy she'd built, not just in money and property, but in finally teaching her children what real love looked like. Inside, through the windows, Victoria could see her family. Diana helping Jordan's kids with a puzzle. Nicole and her husband doing dishes with music playing. David and Marcus's stepson discussing something animated at the table. Her family, imperfect and flawed and human, but finally real. Victoria had invited no one to Thanksgiving last year. This year, she'd invited everyone who mattered. And the difference, the beautiful, hard-won, precious difference, made all the lonely holidays worth it. This story is dedicated to every parent who has felt taken for granted, every person who has had to choose themselves to survive, and every family learning that real love requires reciprocal effort. True family isn't about obligation or blood. It's about showing up, seeing each other fully, and choosing to build something real together. If you're struggling with family dynamics, please know you're allowed to set boundaries. You're allowed to choose yourself. You're allowed to require that relationships flow both ways. And if you're the one who's been taking someone for granted, it's never too late to change. But change requires action, not just words. It requires sustained effort, humility, and genuine growth. May we all have the courage to be honest, the wisdom to grow, and the grace to rebuild what we've broken.